So the next panel is one I've been looking forward extra to, if that's even possible. I think we have a great program, but this is something extra. It will give us some insights into how banks and fintechs see possibilities and challenges in Africa, Middle East, and beyond. And a little background to why this is one of my favorite panels. Well, the panelist is one I've had the pleasure to work closely with and do delegation trips to San Francisco with. One I've been in Tel Aviv with and been in panels with. And also the moderator got to moderate me, which was really, really great. So it's quite a rock star panel, and I will let everyone introduce themselves. Over to the CEO and co-founder of Lendit, Bo Brustkern. Thank you, Bo, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. It's wonderful to be here. So I've got a great panel, as you mentioned, and I'm going to let them speak for themselves. I'd love to kick it off with quick introductions, and just we'll start with Tal. And then Jonas, if you can jump in, and then finally you, and please give a quick intro and tell us why you're here. Give us some context.
Okay, so thank you, Bo. Thank you, Copenhagen Fintech, for the opportunity. As Sarah mentioned, we are a long partner of Copenhagen Fintech. My name is Tal Sharon. I'm managing partner at Equitech, which is an Israeli-based fintech firm working globally. Also president of the Israeli Fintech Association. And we had many opportunities to engage both say financial institution, Copenhagen, and startups, and build a relationship between Israel and Copenhagen. And excited to have this session. Jonas, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tal. Hi, I'm Jonas Tesfu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pangea Accelerator. We are an innovation ecosystem based in Norway and East Africa, and also an investor in early stage startups based in Africa. I've been participating for 3 years, I think, on Copenhagen Fintech, so it's great to be part of this digital version. We were also the winners of the Nordic Impact Award that you had in 2018, so it's great to continue being part of this. So look forward to the panel. I guess I'll leave it up to, is it Evan? Evan, is it you next?
It is indeed. Hello, nicely done, Jonas. Nicely done. Hi, everyone. Hi, Copenhagen. Hi, Nordics. It is with a heavy heart. I am not in Copenhagen physically at the moment. I am missing you all. My name's Ewan, Chief Transformation Officer at Sohar International Bank, based in Muscat in Oman. They're in the Middle East. I've been here since February. Most recently, I was working over at Nordea. So I know and love the Copenhagen Fintech team, doing an awesome job. So great to be here. Over to you, Bill.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to kick it off. This topic is all about partnerships and possibilities in the Middle East and Africa. So we're going to just dive right in. And I'd love to ask Tal to kick it off. Maybe give us a little bit of the backstory, but really dive in on what does the latest venture financing round for Solario, an Israeli company, what does that mean for the world and the change in world order that we're about to see?
So, Bo, you're touching on, it's a small dent, but it's monumental. I think the historical impact of what just happened in the recent weeks, Israel signing a peace treaty both with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, is something that is being discussed both in Israel and globally, and maybe in Bahrain very rapidly. And we just had an event 2 weeks ago where we hosted the Solario. As you mentioned, Solario is a very cool B2B focusing on financing for SMEs. And they were the first startup to publicly being financed by UAE-based venture capital, which is huge because maybe there have been some transaction between the countries, but every time it was through different different shell companies in order not to have, because it's always an issue, how do you transfer funds? And now we have the first publicly discussed investment. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because the peace treaty with the UAE is not only focused on the UAE, it's the gateway to the entire Arab nations. I mean, which is a market that Israel has never been a part of, at least publicly. And a lot of entities, a lot of financial institutions, huge retailers are based from UAE, but working in it can be in Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, a lot of African, a lot of Middle East-based countries, which we very much looking to engage. So that's like the tip of the iceberg in this, and both governments are really supporting this economically and scaling and starting to do delegations. So this will have a huge impact, and I can't wait to see what it will yield.
It's amazing. It's amazing news, and how quickly times have changed when, for a whole host of reasons. But when you and I were at dinner in Tel Aviv in February, it was a world away from where we are today for so many reasons. But one thing I'll celebrate is that, one of the entrepreneurs we were speaking with told me that Israel would become the gateway to the Arab nations, and that seemed a long way off. It seems like we're on that doorstep right now, and the door has in fact opened. So I'm super excited to see what comes of that. Jonas, you're on the ground. You are in country, in many countries. Tell us what it's like. What's the current environment, and are you maintaining optimism amidst a lot of the chaos that's going on right now around the world? Oh, I think you're on mute, buddy.
Hi, sorry for that. Big question. And I mean, I think with all crisis, it's always difficult for startups because all the financial systems are kind of like a little bit on pause. A lot of investors were a little bit on pause. Nobody wanted to decide within 6 months. I think now a lot of things have changed. And specifically also on the African continent, you can see that COVID-19 has been decreasing a lot. In terms of the innovation landscape, I look at COVID-19 has just created so many opportunities for startups, because while corporates has been standing still and been evaluating different things, startups has just been running and running at these opportunities. So I think we will see a lot of interesting solutions popping up in the near future. And also that COVID-19 has kind of forced governments and corporates and all kind of institutions to digitalize and change regardless if they want to or not. You can call it almost like a lead disruptive officer at all organizations. And I think this has created a momentum for change that companies and startups will monetize on. Yeah.
And what countries are you in right now? You've got accelerators.
East Africa mainly. So we also done Pan-African programs where we worked with startups from Egypt, Nigeria, and from all over Africa. But our core focus area is East Africa.
And the African countries, when they're innovating and working on digital solutions, on fintech, are these islands among themselves, or is there collaboration across borders? And how does that play out?
I think there are collaborations across the borders because many companies are also in many areas like MTN and Airtel and others. So there is a lot more collaboration, at least in East Africa. I think they've been working together a lot. Also, the East Africa visa and stuff like that. West Africa is a little bit less collaboration, or between East and West or East and South. But regionally, you can see a lot more collaboration. And that, like as soon as M-Pesa kind of came in Kenya with mobile money, I mean, all innovation is kind of driven by necessity, right? So it's very necessity-driven kind of innovation you see. But that as soon as you have like M-Pesa happening in Kenya, you could see that, Uganda and other countries started utilizing mobile money, mobile wallets and other things. So it doesn't just stop in Kenya. However, there's some countries where it doesn't adopt as quickly, like Ethiopia, but that is mainly because of the financial regulations being very like too high, like barriers of entry. But you could see that you kind of have this domino effect when it comes to certain technologies, specifically in fintech.
Jonas, you're talking about business side, but there's also, I've witnessed a lot of regulatory side from like government initiatives that are supporting cross-border, let's say, payment platform to support women and youth, or underprivileged or underbanked. And these tenders, which are coming from regulators, are usually for multi-countries. It's not a single unit. So I think relating to your question, Bo, it really depends on the mindset of the specific country, but I wouldn't say it's islands of innovation. There's a very holistic approach to the needs and requirements in the entire continent.
Yeah.
And yet there are differences, right, between, so I know that Rwanda has been quite open in terms of attracting talent to their country. And so there is a little bit of regulatory arbitrage that we can see there, right? So, and again, we're talking about partnerships here. So in the context of that, I could see, and challenge me on this, but I could see corporations partnering with fintechs more easily in a regulatory environment where that is freer, and similarly, technologies from the U.S. or continental Europe or China or India coming into country where that is more freely allowed. So, are we seeing some countries that are out in front?
Yeah, I would say that at least in some aspect where they created regulatory sandboxes, and I think Rwanda, as you mentioned, have done that when it comes to drone technologies, and that has enabled drone companies from all over the world to kind of come to Rwanda and commercialize there rather than staying in the US and trying to convince congressmen to allow them to experiment with the drone. And I think also this is where a lot of developing countries has kind of a competitive edge, is if they can be faster at the regulatory framework than many developed countries, because developing countries don't have these legacy institutions that is holding back all the legislation basically. However, not every African country is focusing on this. There's some that are doing it, like Rwanda, but there's some that are terrible at it, like really terrible. Like Ethiopia, for example, is not. I mean, I love Ethiopia, but like the legal financial framework in that country makes it very difficult for fintech companies to do anything.
We spend a lot of time talking with regulators and encouraging them, and hearing what you're saying just sings so true to me. It is, what is the playing field like? Is it muddy or is it clean-cut grass? And we'd love to play on clean-cut grass. I don't care what sport you're playing, even if it's tennis. Ewan, so Sohar, your current employer is lucky to have you. How did they attract you from the great Nordics to Oman? I've never been to Oman, but I do know the Nordics and I love them.
Well, you have a standing invite, Bo, and my panelists, and of course everyone watching. Please get yourself to Oman as soon as you possibly can. It's a wonderful country. Bo, I met with the team here, and they are looking to do something different. I think that's what every senior executive in a bank says at the moment. If we're going to do something different, we've got to change the world. But really, it was the opportunity to transform. It's a 12, 13-year-old bank. There are 5 million people in the country, so similar in size to Denmark, for example. There are some big players. Sohar is one of the key players in the market. And there is an opportunity, I think, to really move things forward. And it's very interesting hearing what my panelists are saying about other parts of Middle East and Africa. Here in Oman, we're very much. I think it's fair to say I brought my prop here, Bo, which is this is my money box with all my paper money here that I have to keep And I have to, when I go out, I have to carry there's my Visa card, there's my driving license, there's my credit card, and then here a medical card, and then so now in the Nordics, it's just this. Sorry, you can't see it. I've got my blurring on. Right, it's just a phone, or my Apple Watch. So what I see here is a huge thirst for these kind of technologies, a huge amount of interest in the technology we see in other markets here, but they're not available here yet. You can't go on Google Pay yet at the stores, but contactless is very, very big now because of COVID. But still, when the guy is delivering stuff to my door here, he's asking for money. He's asking for cash. And that's still a limiting factor. So I think there's all to play for in many markets at the moment. And banks, I think, have a strong opportunity and a strong need. The market does need these banks to be innovating, and we're busy working at that on Sohar. But I think there's all to play for at the moment across many of these markets.
Tell us about your battle against the stamp.
So having spent 3 wonderful years in Denmark, many of yours will know that it's just everything's automatic. Everything just works. The NemID card, you just swipe it, done. I remember walking into the Free store there in Denmark and saying, look, I'd like to get a phone, a contract phone. How do I do that? The chap says, have you got your yellow card? I said, yeah. He goes, swipe. He said, cool, yeah. Which one did you want? And no. So what's happened there is a whole host of KYC activity happened, a whole host of information swapping happened there. Yeah, but in the swipe of a card, they know who I am, I know who they are, and we can proceed with the transaction. Here, and I think in many countries, it's all about the stamp. It's all about have you got 3 stamps of this? Have you got stamps of here? Could you send me the memo? And in many cases, around the Middle East, sending a memo, it means the memo. Print it out, sign it, and then you sign it, and then he signs it, we sign it, and then of course, as you say, Bo, stamp it, because then it's official. Now, what's very interesting, Bo, is more recently, because this stuff stops things, it makes it very difficult to go live with new services when you have to have that physical stamp. Right, but this is where the Microsoft CEO's comment about 3 years of digital transformation happening in 3 months. I wonder what he says now. About 6 months or other. Because of COVID, we see a very different approach now across the market here in Oman and the market, I think, internationally, whereby the battle against the stamp, I think, is being won. Bo, I think we're moving forward because we're realizing that stamp. How necessary was it to get that official stamp? Couldn't we go live and go faster?
I tell you what, in the United States, it is. Sorry, Tal.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the United States, it has killed some industries to have the requirement for a wet signature, is what we call it here in the States, and a medallion is our version of a stamp. I think it's just a fancy term for the same thing.
Medallion.
And years ago, about a decade ago, I founded a fintech, and we did not. Our growth plan was absolutely stunted, without question, by this requirement for stamps. And so, if you can win that battle against the stamp, you will have made perhaps as big of a change, maybe bigger, than what Tal was talking about earlier in terms of the progress in the Middle East and ripping it out of the 18th century.
Would you mind, Bo, if I just defend Oman just for one moment here? I think before Tal speaks, this is my card, my resident ID here, right? And there is a chip in here. So the one point here, they've got digital signatures. It's enshrined in law. It's just we haven't, as a marketplace, implemented it yet. So these markets are looking internationally. They're looking at best practice and going, as Jonas says, making it happen. Just make it happen. So digital signatures enshrined in law here in Oman. But then So I'm making sure that with my colleagues in Sohar to make sure we are bringing that to our customers, to the end user, because at the moment everything is wet signature. Sorry, please.
Yeah, no, please, Tal.
I actually wanted to refer to what you said, because we see in different financial institutions and markets around the Middle East and Africa, that they're adopting European regulation like GDPR and PSD2 and open banking, and trying to do that, although they're not necessarily obliged to. But they're doing that. I mean, one of the financial institutions that we work with just stated that they understood that if they won't adopt these type of regulation, they can't work with startups, because then a startup understand, okay, it doesn't give me any benefit. I need to do it all over again if I approach ING or whatever a huge monumental financial institution in Europe. So do you see that also in your bank, in Oman in general?
Yeah, I see the strong thirst for, we're watching closely what's happening around the planet, not just in Europe, but around the planet. And then, when I arrived here, I was delighted to see my colleagues saying, yes, and this is our API framework. Nice. And this is, this is our open banking plan. Okay, cool. And we're doing this omnichannel. Wow. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I think we're certainly moving forward there. And I just this morning, Tal, I was talking about open banking with a startup. They've come to us and said, right, we've got some open banking activity. What can we do? And of course, I've grabbed them and go, yes, please. Yes, hello, yes, please.
Did they have to stamp their API?
They will need to stamp the NDA. I'm only kidding, guys. I'm only kidding. So we're getting somewhere, I think, which is I think really positive in the markets. But I find the point that you make, I see that a lot. That we as a market here, and we as, I think, the financial institutions are watching closely and going, we'll do that, not because we're obliged to necessarily, but because it's the right way ahead. It's the right move.
Yeah, and I can see you absolutely leapfrogging the competition. So I want to ask you, Jonas, a question and put it in context with what I know about Tal and his homeland of Israel. Jonas, when your companies are building, are they building to partner, number one, and are they building to for economies other than those that they're operating in? So, for example, a Rwandan company building for an Oman bank?
Yeah. Okay. Good questions. Yeah, they focus on solving regional continental problem. Very few are focused on solving a Kenya-specific problem. Preferably a problem all over developing countries. So we usually look at the bottom of the pyramid, and then you say, the top part of it. Because the top part is like over a billion people, but it's like, this is the people that are now joining the middle class, and it's also the biggest growing kind of like consumer group in the world. And so we see a lot of companies targeting that group specifically. And they build to collaborate. And we can see a lot of them already incorporating other kind of like solutions, for example, that Safaricom has when it comes to M-Pesa integration. And basically, we have one company that do like automatic payment for they're like an employee assistive kind of platform. So they do the time registration, automatic payments, do the full reporting. They can even have GPS look. I mean, they have all kinds of stuff, but it's all integrated within like the biggest kind of like technical infrastructures out there. So I think they're very resource smart. They don't build it unless they really have to. And if there are already existing platforms out there, they just integrate it to it.
And I know we're very short on time, so I want to ask one other question that's been burning for me and you. And you were chief digital officer at Nordea Bank and founded the Nordea Ventures. What's your perspective on the innovation and returns for an investor, a venture investor in this environment you're in now? I mean, are you just licking your chops thinking, wow, there's so much opportunity? Or is it still just, I'll leave it an open question. How do you feel about it?
I think there is tremendous opportunity right now. I mean, the company we met this morning, I'm thinking, right, that's a 5%. We'll take a 5% of that right now. I think that it's from a corporate, let me answer it by saying both from a corporate venture capital perspective, I think there is tremendous opportunity. From a straight VC, I think you need to be very, very sensible and very sensitive, because corporate-wise, we have a different viewpoint, different aspect there, and innovation, and growing a marketplace, growing an ecosystem. I think from a straight VC standpoint, I think it's still rather early in this region, in Oman in particular. But I see a lot more happening around some of the larger countries in the Middle East and then in Africa.
And Tal, you're in a perfect position then too, as well, right? Because you do the corporate partnership and venture investing.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between CVC and VCs. We won't have time to go into it, but we're working a lot with investors on due diligence in fintech companies that they want to invest in, and we see the shift. Actually, a lot, I'd say 30-40% is preserved for their own portfolio companies in order to make sure that they go through this. Although there are some segments that are exploding, like financing, lending, trading. These are, I see more and more investors moving capital towards these elements, everything from financing on the B2B, SMBs, to young professionals without credit history. So these are the areas that I currently put a focus in investment.
Outstanding. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. I'm going to pass it back to Sarah, and thank you very much for inviting us to participate. We had a great time.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a rockstar panel. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.